Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another part of my series of pretty much my short stories. That's I don't really have much for a title for it because that's all it really is. Pretty much bottom line, this notebook here is full of all of my short stories. So if you haven't listened to any of my other short stories, the premise of this whole series is that I write short stories pretty much, if you guys can see this, kind of like one per page. And I'll write them pretty much across the month, pretty much. So, like, this one will be all June stories, the stories that I've written in June, and they're one story per page. I don't know why I did two, but it's pretty much one story per page, and it's really fun and it's a cool challenge. And if you're, small town. Oh man, I can't even talk. A small time writer like me, like, published one book, or maybe you haven't published this or any book, it's a good writing exercise because I do multiple genres and poems and all that stuff. So that's kind of like what this series is all about. So I think without further ado, well, I'm just going to go right into the short stories for you guys, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. Hopefully, if not, uh, sorry. I don't know. I don't know. Let's just get into it without any more rambling. All right. So this first story here was written on June 3rd here, and this is called Arboreal Abode. Finding a winding dirt path, he followed it through the woods, brushing past thick bushes and scrambling over loose stones. Ahead, he saw an opening where two trees arched together to form a door of bramble. As he walked, he listened to the themes of bird calls, the chatters of scampering squirrels, and the quiet whispers of the wind sitting through emerald shades of the various leaves above. He breathed in and felt fresh air fill his body, rejuvenating and pure. He stretched his arms wide to embrace the full serenity. Distracted by the peace of the woods, he passed through the arboreal archway and approached an open field. Vibrant green grass, with patches of orange, yellow, and white flowers, dotted the land joyously. In the center of the plain was a single oak tree, enormous and wide. The branches reached high, the leaves bloomed, and all around it the homes of all critters could be found. He came up to the tree and found its round roots digging deep into the earth. He sat down and rested his back on the roots, and as he breathed in steadily, he felt as if his heartbeat was attuned to nature. The wind, the birds, the creatures, the shade. All of it was steady. All of it was calm. Before long he had dozed off to the purest form of tranquillity. He was awoken by the call of a bright red cardinal, perching right above. Yes, this was not his home, and so he stood up to leave, a fresh breath in his lungs. Tomorrow he'd be back. Another day of renewal. So, this is a nice, very peaceful story. So yeah, if you know me, that's kind of like my whole vibe. Is definitely just very chill, very relaxed, kind of go with the flow in a way. Kind of. I would also say kind of just like, do what you like as well. But for me, it's very peaceful when I'm out in nature. So like when we're walking out in nature itself, it's very, very calming for me, especially just kind of like getting the fresh air of the trees around us, or seeing like little, like even like today we went out on the trails and saw like little chipmunks and saw the birds above flying above and chirping and all that stuff, and saw the squirrels scampering, and it was very fun. And something about that just really gives me a lot of peace. And I think a lot of people think that way too. I know a lot of city people too. I mean, we are in the city, but a lot of city people also are like, nah, nature, no. Which is fine. But this is why I wrote the story, is because it's kind of like a reflection of how peaceful it can be, that some people are like me probably would be able to doze off at the roots of a tree. So, but yeah, so that's that one. On to the next one here. This one was written on June 7th here, and this one is called Servant of Ulgol. Heavy sweat poured down the wizard's face. He barely managed to catch his breath before a sudden red flashing light shot at him. Lifting up his nearly broken staff, he deflected the menacing spell and released his counterattack of jagged, icy darts, sailing to his enemy. However, this sorcerer, the wizard's opponent, under the cliffs of the Algard Ranges, was no stranger to duels. At the wave of his hand, the sorcerer Thulon brushed away the desperate attempt. In response, Thulon curled his fingers, where darkened and twisted roots sprung up from underneath the wizard's feet, coiling around his wrists with a thorny touch. The wizard winced in pain, dropping his staff and grimacing as Thulon steadily approached him. Pale face, curved horns, and black eyes, Thulon was the appearance of Volcavi, the wretched power of Ulgol, the ultimate sin of Ordia. One hateful glare from Thulon, and the wizard's mind was flooded with visions of fire, death, and the crumbling of the world. The roots dug deep into the wizard's skin, now wrapping around his legs and waist. The time was here and now, where he would be a living sacrifice to the true ruler of Ordia, Aluvendal, the father, creator, and redeemer. Thulon sneered at the wizard, seeing the invisible flame that would never be snuffed out. And before the wizard could speak, the thorns ran across his neck. The blood was spilled, his vision faded, but he knew, despite his defeat, the light would soon prevail. So, quite the opposite, as you can see from the very peaceful side of, what was it, Arboreal Abode. This is Servant of Ulgol is actually a little glimpse, I guess you could say, into like what my fantasy writing is kind of about in a way. Some of these names, obviously, very confusing for people who have not read my book. Servant of Ulgol. So Ulgol is actually pretty much the representation of like the devil, pretty much in my fantasy series. It definitely has a lot of spiritual themes to it. So Ulgol is like this, original ultimate sin, upon Ordia, and so like my book is called The Lands of Ordia, and Ordia is the main setting of my books here. And Thulon here, this sorcerer that I'm reading about, this servant of Ulgol, he is extremely bad. He's like second in line with like how evil the current fantasy series is all about. Because like there's one main Dark Lord in the main series, which is not Ulgol, and then Thulon is pretty much kind of like technically third in line for like how terrible someone can be in Ordia. So this Thulon guy does a lot of bad stuff in my main series of The Lands of Ordia. So this is kind of like a glimpse of like how bad he is from like a random wizard encounter. Yeah, so hopefully you guys kind of like enjoy that. There's also this reference of the appearance of Volcavi, which I think was really cool too, because it's pretty much like the language in a way of the enemy, where if you speak it or if you start to read it, it pretty much like infiltrates your mind in a way. It's like that dark magic that like as soon as it's spoken, it kind of twists your mind into like doing like something terrible. It's kind of like a possession style thing, but like through language. So I think that's a really cool concept that I made. I think I made. I haven't really read it anywhere else or heard it, so maybe somebody else did, but just some references for you, and that's kind of like the reason why I wrote it. It's just kind of like a little glimpse into my fantasy writing. So, on to the next one here. We're going to do, this one was written on June 14th here. And this one is a poem, and it's called Where Wind and Breath Meet. Leaning back in the seat, where wind and breath meet, a very familiar place, where comfort and peace embrace. Hearing the chatter of birds in the emerald canopies they're heard, while the world flies by, not bothering to look up to the sky. I sit here in a quiet moment, dashing away all torment, clearing the busy scattered mind, allowing creation to be kind, enough to give me new breath, let the worries within me be bereft. Tending a small bed of flowers, watching the gentle rain showers. And so I return once again, with page in mind and pen, leaning back in the seat where wind and breath meet. So, short poem, like I said. These are only like, hopefully I can show you guys here. Literally like, 1 page poems, so of course they're going to be short. This one is actually almost every time that I write these stories, I actually either write them on the couch that I have back here, or I write them on the patio outside, because obviously being outside is where I feel like very just peaceful bliss, things like that. And it's true, because I basically hear the birds above. They're, singing and chirping and chattering and whatever. And then I can actually see one of like the busy streets over over to the side there. So I see everybody rushing by, and then I hear the birds, and it's just like it's such a like a dichotomy of sounds. It's really crazy. But just being outside is just very, very nice, like I've said. So June was definitely, I feel like, a nature-filled month because everything's like in full bloom. There's so much like nature around. Everything smells nice because get so much flowers and scents of the leaves, and it's great. So I really, really enjoy it. So that was pretty much short line. That's kind of like what the poem is all about, is me sitting down writing the poems. Another little glimpse into kind of like my writing methods. So, all right, next story was written on June 22nd here. And this one is called Relief at the Valley. The traveler's legs were heavy. Each step felt like a burden while the sun's heat beat down on him. How much longer could he endure on this expedition he was uncertain of. Precariously skipping up a small hill of jagged rocks with dried grass crunching beneath him, the view of relief suddenly came to focus. There before him was a long valley, stretching for miles from side to side. Rolling hills appeared like an ocean of magnificent green waves. At the center of the hills was a shining silver lake, its surface glittering and shining, as if it were made of the finest gems. The traveler wondered if they were really gems because as his eyes drifted from the roaming hills to the shimmering waves, behind it all were towering mountains, each connected with one another, covering the horizon in might. Patches of trees and brambles of bushes dotted the perilous sharp cliffsides. Under the shadows of the mountains, the valley before the traveler was protected. A cool breeze ran through the lands, giving this place a sense of serenity. The deep magic of the world wasn't through words or spells. It was through the purity of nature and the divinity of creation. The traveler stepped forward, his limbs no longer aching. Here he was at peace. So, once again, here we go again with nature again, this guideless nature freak over here. um, so yeah, pretty much this traveler is kind of wandering throughout the unknown lands, and everything's aching, and then he gets to the top of the hill, and then he sees like this really cool, magnificent sight. He's just like, wow, that's really cool. And that's like his like relief kind of washes over him. He's just like, here's what I came here for. And then he gets excited, and the pain starts to like wash away a little bit. So I think that's kind of like that vibe of when you're walking for so long. Like if you're hiking and stuff, it's like the journey there might be a little like arduous and like very, you get all the aches and stuff. But then once you kind of get to your destination, it's just like, oh yeah, this is why we came here. This is really, really cool. And the really cool thing actually about this story is I actually wrote this while my wife and I were in Mexico for a weekend. And this scene itself is actually like based off of what I saw over there. And it was kind of like this, where we kind of like drove around this road, and then all of a sudden into view on the side was this huge, huge valley. And it was incredible. It was pretty much like this, where it was just rolling hills. In the center of it, kind of like on the bottom, was like literally like a lake that was just like shining, and it was awesome because it was, daytime, so it looked amazing. And then far off in the distance is the towering mountains, the ones that just go miles high. And I don't know, something about mountains is just like magnificent to me. So that was kind of like my inspiration for that. So it's very, very fun. And here we go. The last story that I have for you guys it was written on June 27th, which is actually the day that I'm recording it. So basically I wrote it today and I'm recording it today. So that's pretty fun. And this one is called The Mystic Manor. As soon as the boy got home, he dropped his backpack and headed outside, where in his lofty treehouse he kept his favorite weapon of choice, a trusty wooden sword that his father had made for him. The sword was light, its grip sturdy, and it held a certain essence that brought the boy's imagination to life. Once he climbed up and retrieved his enchanted sword, the boy felt compelled to venture into the nearby woods, across the rolling hills and over the gentle streams. The mission was set, his feet were ready. Charging forward, his vision of the empty dirt road in front of him changed to a pathway filled with horrible orcs and nasty goblins. The rolling hills were pouring with them. So with his wooden blade, now morphed to one of shining silver, The boy cut and slashed and dodged his way precariously through the ranks. Yet he was undefeated, and as he rose to the top of the hill where the woods remained dense to his left, he saw a rather peculiar sight. Down at the opposite side of the hill was a massive mansion with high peaks and sharp angles. Windows glowed an odd autumnal orange. The rooftops were colored gray, and smoke billowed out of a tall stone chimney. This mansion, though, could only be seen through a strange mist settling by the nearby stream. One blink it was there, two blinks it was gone. The boy was flustered, his mind was flummoxed, but he stood tall, breathed in, and as he saw the mansion fade in and out, his resolve was to find out what exactly this place was, and why he could see it. And just as quickly as the house appeared, so did the boy vanish inside. And that's the Mystic Manor. This one is actually pretty, I would say, like close to heart in a way, personally for me. This is actually kind of like, in a way, what I would do when I was a kid. Because way back in the day, this is like when I was like a teeny tiny kid, just a little guy. Yeah, pretty much my dad made me and my brother some wooden swords, which was very fun because this was obviously during the time when I was getting into, fantasy stuff like a Narnia and Lord of the Rings, anything with that, and Star Wars too. So of course, having like this wooden sword, it's just like, oh yeah, I can go out and use my imagination and pretend that there's orcs in front of me. I can kind of slash and and like that. And then of course with like all the all the fantasy, sci-fi, whatever films in the time, magic had to be part of it too. So I would be, imagining like these spells shooting out and all that stuff. And so it was really, really fun. And, being out in pretty much like the middle of nowhere at this time, like when I was first kind of getting into all the fantasy stuff, we did live out, our house was out in the country here. And so we had these hills behind us and pretty much a lonely dirt road. And so I would constantly go out on those hills and just pretend, with my wooden sword to, hack and slash through ranks of orcs and goblins and defeat the mighty troll and stuff like that. And it was really, really fun. And we did have a tree house, and it was very, very fun. That was pretty much just like a platform with like railings around it, so it wasn't like the boxed in one, but it was so much better to have just the platform because you can hear everything and you can feel the breeze, and it was incredible. But it just kind of goes back to like those adventurous times where I could just use my imagination and have fun for hours. And I feel like a lot of I don't know, because like that's the thing, like I don't have kids, but like if kids are missing that nowadays. Everybody's just kind of like stuck in screens, or they're busy with, I don't know, something else. That's the thing, I don't really know, but I feel like the digital era is really kind of cutting deep into like kids' imaginations. I feel like because I feel like there's not a lot of kids who like go out with that kind of creativity anymore, and it's kind of a bummer to say, but it's just something, an observation of mine. It might not be true, but that's just kind of my take on it. But that's kind of like the premise of that last story, is just going back to the good old days of just having fun. So yeah, that is kind of all of my short stories. Yeah, it's definitely a little shorter. I didn't really have a lot of time to write a lot this month. I think there's only like 4 or 5 stories in here. But the whole point of this is just so that I just keep writing all these short stories. So it's been very fun, especially for me. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed listening to all these personal ones. Each story is different. Like I said, not one of them is connected to another. They're all different. So yeah, it's definitely a fun challenge of mine for this year. So yeah, let me know if I did any cool stuff in my stories. Let me know if none of the stories were good, or if all of them were good. Let me know, because I'll just see you guys in the next episode. See you later.